Is it time to call Chicken Little because the sky is falling?
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jess Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me here on today's episode of Locked On Flames. I am joined by Zararis. How are you, Nick?
I'm very good. We're getting into the fun part of the season, and we're going to talk about it, but God, the Flames are lucky the Oilers are even more of a disaster right now. Otherwise, the Flames would be the biggest story in hockey.
Yes, thankfully we can look elsewhere for a train wreck. But before we dive into this Southern Alberta train wreck, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That is $150 if your team wins. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get started. Now, we haven't really talked since the Heritage Classic, not the Winter Classic, but what was your takeaway from all that fun stuff?
That was a terribly played hockey game. Both of those teams looked atrocious. Like, I understand the ice isn't great ever at those outdoor games. It's choppy, it's clunky, it's hard to move as well as you usually do. I understand all of that, but those teams both looked atrocious. Just frankly, they both did not look good. It was very sloppy, it was very disjointed. And I don't want to say it's an outlier because the Flames haven't been playing well, but they haven't played like that where it's just blown assignment after blown assignment, guys getting wide open walk-ins, and Markstrom fighting for his life. And I'll give credit where it's due. Markstrom's been really good, and I want to talk about that a little more later on.
Yeah.
But you can only get by for so long on the talking about it. We know we can do better. The recurring theme that it's bad right now, but we know it'll be better. I trust the guys in that room. Eventually, when you're just saying it over and over again, it becomes yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like when your mom is asking you a million questions. Yes, mom. Yes. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
At some point, I need to see some action.
Right. Yeah. And, Markstrom is playing or played very well in that game, but in really a few other games before too. And I went to look at his save percentage. It's only a 901. Not great.
Well, there's two sides to that, and that's why we don't only use save percentage. But I don't want to use that. I don't want to go there yet. I want to go start peeling back the stats because I pulled a few interesting ones for the second segment. So just big picture, is the sky falling?
No.
I don't think so. Then again, they're one loss away from tying the fourth longest losing streak in franchise history and two losses away from the third longest. So it very quickly can come off the tracks here. I know I forget whose column I read this morning while I was doing show prep. Compared it to the Canucks last year where they fired Tocchet in December. The issue with that is the issue with that is, of course, the Flames already fired the coach for the quick sugar high, which is why we always talk about in respect to hiring and firing of coaches. This is more prescient in football because the season is shorter, but it still rings true here in hockey. They don't do a ton. When you are changing the coach, for the most part, you are getting a sugar high. You are hoping that the new coach juice gives you a little bit of a boost, and that's what's wrong with your group. It's just they need a shake up of the energy, they need a shake up of their mojo, their confidence, whatever. And by changing the coach, which is the easy, quick solution, you are hoping for a rapid solution as opposed to really doing the legwork. And that's something that a lot of teams struggle with, frankly, that they would rather try and get that short, quick term fix where putting a band-aid on the problem as opposed to really identifying the issues. And again, as I said, the entirety of last season, when the Flames embarked on one of the most unlucky seasons of all time, they're a talented team. They're not playing like it. And at some point, you are what your record says you are. At some point, even if you're a talented team and you're not winning, you might be talented, but you're not good.
Yeah. And I'm hesitant to put a lot of blame or accountability on Huska because
I don't think that's fair either.
I think that, he's not the one playing these games. Do I think we need to tone it down with the the blender of the lines? Yes. But I was happy to see that he is rolling with Huberdeau, Lindholm, and Mangiapane again, which, I mean, let's leave that for now and see if we can build something off of it again.
I agree with you in respect to the line blender. It does feel like Husk is kind of trying to grasp at anything to find any sort of a foothold where he's kind of swimming against the current right now and really trying to get them to do anything to show some sign of life. And at some point, you can only have so many configurations. Like if off the top of my head, I forget what is it, 18, and then the exclamation point is how you do permutations. If I remember my 10th grade math correctly, something like that. But yeah, there are only so many configurations you can have before you've exhausted them all. And some of them, frankly, don't make sense. So you can rule some of those out. But just changing the lines for the sake of changing the lines, that doesn't work either. That is again a short-term solution to a bigger problem.
Yeah. And I think there's so much more here to fix than just short-term issues. I think that there are multiple, issues that could be resolved with the same solution potentially, but I don't know if things are really I mean, things are bad. They're not great, but you could be the Sharks, I guess. It could be worse.
So the counterpoint to that is the Sharks knew they were trying to lose this year. The Sharks dropped the puck on opening night with the goal of being the team that picks first overall. The Flames dropped the puck on opening night with the mindset of, okay, the bad man that was our coach is finally gone. Everybody's going to be happy. We're going to get off to a great start. We're going to hit the ground running. We're going to play so well that the guys who are still pending unrestricted free agents are going to want to stay, which has been tabled, which is something we should probably talk about briefly later on in the episode. But everybody just kind of banked on changing the coach being the pragmatic solution. And sometimes changing the coach works. That typically works in season. When you do the in-season coach hire, that is a really good way to give your team a quick shot in the arm and rattle off a 7-3, 7-4, and get yourself out of whatever funk you're in. Or in the case of the Canucks last year or the Flames when they first hired Darryl, it gives that coach the rest of that season as runway to build into the next season. Where again, and we know that Brad wanted to fire Darryl in season last year and he was told no, but in an ideal world, you would have given, if you settled on Huska, the last 20, 30 games of last year to get these iron all this stuff out before coming into the season with actual expectations. I'm not ready to put a lot of blame on the coach yet because some of this is just they haven't played enough games yet. A lot of these stats will begin to level out. But there are some things, and we're going to talk about them in a minute, about what we understand so far about how the team's playing that kind of paint the picture reflecting what we've been talking about, where they have talent, but the talent doesn't necessarily complement each other particularly well. It's great that you have talented players, but do they all have the same skill set, or do you have a diversity of skill sets? There's a lot of underlying things we're going to unpack in a minute.
Yes, and we are going to talk about that coming up next here on Locked On Flames. We are going to take a quick break here and talk to you about FanDuel. You guys know that we like to place our bets occasionally, and I will never be betting on the Flames again. It's a curse. It's a jinx.
Don't on the
do
under.
I tried, and then that failed, and then I bet the over, and it failed again. But right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 in bonus bets if your team wins. If you've been thinking of joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use, instant cash outs. You can bet on things like spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And we do have another quick break here. We're going to talk to you about BetterHelp. BetterHelp is a resource for those who may need to talk to someone regarding their mental health and things that, have been going on in life. They have a variety of different therapists and counselors to help you work through these situations. And if you ever feel like your brain is getting in its own way and you are very much in your head, you should use BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnhl today to get 10% off of your first month. Make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNHL. Thanks everyone for hanging out with us on today's episode of Locked On Flames as we talk all about the dysfunction, I guess, that is carried over from last season. It's still been less than 10 games.
We're 2.5 weeks in.
Feels like it's been a lot longer.
When you're losing, it feels like it's a lot longer. It really does. There is no season longer than the baseball team that has to play 162 games that's going to win 65 if they're lucky. The Oakland A's did not have fun this past season.
No, they had a lot on their plate, and it's similar to the Flames. They're potentially getting a new home, but just in an entirely different state. So it's not that great. But what do we know so far in these 9 games?
Flames are not good at shooting the puck. Coming into the season, we said they were going to need to wait to find those 34 goals they lost from Tyler Toffoli somehow. 34 goals from one guy. And our assumption was adding up your presumptive 10 to 15 each for Coronado and Peltier. That gets you into your mid-20s. And then Sharangovich, okay, that should be your 35 to 40 goals because the Flames were, 19th, if I remember correctly, in goals last year. Just about, I want to say they were 15 or so goals off the pace of the last team to make the playoffs last year. So they needed to find a way to come up with about 45 total more goals than the team last year. And you thought your 2 rookies would be able to give you close to half of that. You thought the guy you traded Tyler Toffoli for would be able to give you, a third of that, and that gets you close. And then you're hoping for positive regression from Huberdeau and Kadri, who are off to difficult starts as well. And really quickly, you can see the issues with the calculus here. We know the Flames don't have shooting talent, and they're an effort team. And that's why it feels so hard sometimes for them in these games, because if they're chasing a goal the entire game, they got to work twice as hard to generate that offense because they don't have the elite shooting talent that other teams do. They have to work really hard to generate their offense.
There have been several attempts where it is like watching a child trying to hit a ball off of a tee and they just whiff. Dylan Dubé, I'm very sorry to call you out like this, but I'm kind of glad.
You do it because you love him.
It's hard to watch, and I'm sure it's even harder on them because they're the ones doing it professionally. We're just here talking about it, but I hope that there is some sort of magic potion in their Gatorade bottles that will just teach them how to shoot well.
So what I'll say to that, they are currently shooting 5.19% at 5-on-5, and they're shooting 6.8% in all situations. The league average in all situations is 9.9. The Flames will not shoot 9% this year, more than likely. They'll probably settle somewhere in the low 8s or the high 7s. But they will score more playing the way they're playing right now just because they haven't played enough games, and that's the way math works. They will get some positive regression in the goal scoring. But on the counterpoint to that, they are currently generating, and this is where the room for optimism and why I think that just playing the way they're playing, they'll eventually start scoring more. 54% of the actual scoring chances, 51% of the expected goals, 52% of the high danger chances, 31% of the actual goals. So that tells you there's some room there that they're going to start scoring more. They are not going to be an elite offensive team playing the way they play. They don't have the talent to do that. That means they're going to have to be better defensively and get a little bit more shooting luck. And the goaltending won't have to be this good, which is something you had mentioned, that his save percentage is only 901. He's also, where did I write it down? 7th. No, not 7th. He's 4th with 7 goals saved above expected of anyone of all the goalies who've started this year. So he's that's good. If you are in the top 10 of goals saved above expected, you are in the upper tier of goalies. And as we said, goaltending, kind of ebbs and flows. So Markstrom probably wasn't going to be ever as bad as he was last year, this year. But at the very least, there's room for improvement. But the reason it feels like the sky is falling right now, and why I think a lot of people are getting antsy, is nobody wants the answer to be wait. The answer of patience isn't appealing to a team that just endured the season the Flames did last year.
Yeah, and for that to be carrying over now, it's very, I hate using the word uncomfortable, but it's not fun. You're not enjoying this. It's like an uncomfortable, I guess, like growing pain and just that awkward phase of, unfortunately, a hockey team. And there's still plenty of hockey to be played. Now, if we're talking like this at the All-Star break, then
even before that, if we're still talking like this, Christmas, it's over.
It will be beyond over at that point. I'm very curious to see what management's plan is now, because they have been telling reporters that they're putting a lot of stuff on hold. I meant to ask you this. Noah Hannafin, has he looked, or has he performed as bad as he's looked stats-wise?
Underlying numbers-wise, it's hard to gauge anybody individually with only, 7-8 games of sample, but they're getting relatively outchanced when he's on the ice. I'll pull it up right now while I'm talking. The problem is the Flames on a macro level are never going to have terrible underlying numbers because of the style they play, where they always have the puck and they're always in the offensive zone. So right now he's at 38% of the goals scored. So yeah, like we were saying, the other team is scoring more when he's on the ice. 51% of scoring chances, 49% expected goals, 54% high danger. So the numbers say he's not playing as badly as he is, but there are some things that, if you're under 50% at expected goals, but you're generating more high danger, that means you're conceding a lot of garbage volume, and you'll live with that. That if the other team is generating like 50 scoring chances, but the expected goals of that is less than, the 35 scoring chances you generate, you take that trade-off. You want to generate more quality offense as opposed to quantity. The issue for the Flames, and like I said when I pulled this up, the Flames' underlying numbers are always going to look decent because they're a volume team. They can kind of cheat the system effectively and have decent underlying numbers because of the style they play.
Which is nice, but it's not accurate, and it's not great, especially when you're trying to explain that what you're seeing on paper is not remotely the product you're getting on ice, which just frustrating all around, really.
It's rough, man. Again, everything that can go wrong is going wrong right now. They've scored 6 goals in a week, something ridiculous like that. Yeah, stuff like that just doesn't happen over the course of a long season. But the spin zone is the Flames are getting this out of the way now, and it'll get better. The other alternative is they are this bad.
But there's room for positivity because there's still so much left to happen. But we are going to take a quick break here before we get to talking about our approach and, what's the next step in all of this. All we talk about is the next step, and maybe we just have to push the team to do it. But before we do that, we are going to take a quick break and talk to you about the daily fantasy sports app of the Locked On NHL Network. All you have to do is pick whether studs like McKinnon, Makar, Crosby, McDavid will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more in a given game. To win a 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Flames fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you will get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Thanks, everyone, for sticking around with us here on Locked On Flames as Nick and I, we're still in the thick of things.
I don't want to say talking off a ledge, because if you're jumping off a ledge after like 6 games, that's a little dramatic. Like, I'm a dramatic person. I am, what's the word I'm looking for? I am liable to hyperbole. That doesn't sound right. I am susceptible. I am susceptible to using hyperbole in these types of situations. And it makes you feel better, because at the very least, if you're getting a joke off, you're not thinking about the actuality you're dealing with. And that's part of why a lot of people like to use humor to cope in difficult situations. And what I hope the Flames are doing right now is trying to find a way to get a grip on this. Because, again, like I said at the top, you can say the right things for so long that we're better than this, we expect more than this, and that's great. But eventually you actually have to start playing like it. Otherwise, it doesn't mean anything. And the Flames aren't in a fragile situation, big picture. They've got stable ownership. They've got an owner who's willing to spend money. They've got the arena deal finalized. But there is a risk here, if this season goes badly, of you're just going to entirely have your fan base apathetic to your team. Not mad, not disappointed, just entirely they don't care anymore, which is where you don't want to be. So it's really important that even if the Flames don't have the best of season, they show some type of improvement, which is always your goal. You want to get better as your season goes along. And 2, they want direction. More than anything, the Flames need a sense of direction. And I'm not one who believes as much in the whole you are what your culture is, etc. I do think people use that as a crutch to try and explain things they don't understand as well. But in this case, the Flames are a team that lacks a clear direction beyond we'd like to make the playoffs. That's really the only direction. There's no plan to get there. There's no we're going to do this, that. We're going to keep these guys. We're going to send those guys out. It just feels like everyone keeps on waiting. Even the organization keeps on waiting for things to change. And they're just not changing because they're not actually changing anything.
And I think that today's news regarding all of the contract extensions basically being put on hold may shift things in a better direction. Potentially, we could be pulling ourselves back onto the road rather than continuing down a ditch.
That's your hope. That is all you can do is hope, unfortunately. It is really... It is unsatisfying, and it is why sports people, sports fans, like knee-jerk reactions. They like fire the coach, trade this guy, cut that guy, call this guy up, because those are quick, tangible, realistic solutions. If you're at work and something's not working, what do? You change what you're doing. In sports, it's a little less... You can't be as knee-jerk and as reactive, because when you're constantly reactive in sports, it's a little less linear than the real world. It's a little more linear than the real world, in that you might do something right now and it gives you that knee-jerk reaction that gives you the quick sugar rush where it feels like you did something accomplished. You accomplished something. You sent this guy down. For example, let's say they trade Vladar for like a 3 and they call up Dustin Wolf. That is a sugar high solution. Look at what's going on in Buffalo right now with Devin Levy, who played a couple games, really looked unprepared, got injured, got a few days off. He's going to be back relatively soon. But there's a world where that type of thing happens. You just trading the goalie to get the third goalie up. And the reason they didn't do it is exactly that, what is going on in Buffalo. So you got to think a little more. You got to think multidimensionally. You got to think short-term, medium-term, long-term. And fans don't want that, because they're going to watch the game tomorrow against Dallas, which is an important game against a good hockey team. I want to win tonight. I want the losing streak to be over. I want Huberdeau and Kadri to play well. We need to survive until Rasmus Anderson comes back from his suspension, and then we can go from there and really start building some momentum. Unfortunately, they have to play the game. The Flames want to win. It's not like they're not trying. It's not like they're playing terribly. It's the things are not going their way. Patience is boring. Patience is also a virtue.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way to put it. I was looking at stats, like head-to-head stats from last season with these two. The Flames beat them twice in regulation, and one of their 17 overtime losses comes at the hands of the Stars as well. And that surprised me because the Stars are such a significantly better team.
They are. The Stars are a very talented team. The Stars are a good team, and they're still not playing great yet, frankly, the
No.
Stars. They started out a little bit slow, but they've got one of the best forward groups in the entire league. Miro Heiskanen is a really talented defenseman. Thomas Harley and Nils Lundqvist have been pretty solid out of the gate for them, and Ryan Suter hasn't sank them yet on the back end. So they're off to a pretty good start, and it eventually you run out of easy games. I mean, they should have beaten the Oilers were shorthanded. The Oilers are not playing well. That was a winnable hockey game. That you got to take care of business against the bad teams, because if you're struggling against the bad teams, what are you going to do when you have to play the good teams?
Exactly. And we did see that last year against Arizona and the 3 losses to Chicago. Like, oh, that's demoralizing. Like, that cannot feel good. So at what point are you going to put this whole thing into action and stop saying we can win and actually start winning?
If I knew the answer, I'd tell you. It's what I always tell. In sports, there are some things we're always never going to be able to understand, to quantify, and there's always going to be a human element. And the goal in understanding that human element is what's going to bring out the best in these guys individually and as a group. And right now, they're not doing that. They are still a little wonky. They're a little disjointed, and they're going to start pressing because they're feeling the intensity surrounding the team. Once McDavid comes back and the Oilers start getting it together, the Flames will start driving conversation, which doesn't happen, which is not a good thing.
No.
You do not want to be the center of conversation as a team that your goal was to make the playoffs.
No. When I see people outside of the Flame circle talking about the Flames, do you know how uncomfortable that is? You're not supposed to talk about this team. Do not. Come the playoffs, that's when you can mention them. That's it.
In a good year, yeah. We need the Flames to find whatever it is that they're not doing right now. It's really simple. It's on the graphic if you're watching on YouTube. To quote Michael Irvin, what are you prepared to do about it? Don't just tell me, oh, we played terrible. Oh, we need to be better. Do something about it.
Yeah. And, that's tomorrow's a new day. Hopefully they turn over a new leaf and start acting.
Words of Michael Bublé. Tomorrow is a new day.
And they'll start acting like a team rather than individuals out there on the ice. But that does it for us today on Locked On Flames. Thank you so much for hanging out with us and tuning in, whether you're listening on your favorite podcast platform or watching on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed and hanging out with us, because we're here for you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. You can find us on social media, Jess Belmosto and Nick Zararis. And Nick, do you have any parting words for us today?
I cannot wait to eat dinner. I am so hungry.